There's nothing better than waking up in the morning and seeing an email like this. It says, Ben Elton, due to huge demand, second show's added for Brisbane and Perth. The one and only Ben Elton. Good to see you, mate.
Yeah, must have been. You felt good about it. Imagine how I felt.
I reckon. That's what I'm thinking.
Second show added in Perth. That's a really lovely, warm feeling. Hometown gig. And it also means, because it's now, we're adding it's at the end of the tour, so it means I'm going to start and finish my Australian tour right here at home in Perth. So that'd be nice.
Seems fitting, doesn't it?
Go home to bed at the end of it.
Your own bed.
Stagger home.
That's brilliant.
Well, I mean, you worked on films and books for a long while. What was returning to stand-up like? I mean, was it like getting back on a bike?
I think not particularly similar. I mean, certainly I was still able to do it, and I can say that, if that's what you mean, I think it is. I can say that with some confidence because I've just done the UK leg of this tour. It's a very long leg. It was 75 dates. Everyone but a preparation, but a warm-up for my Perth return. It was kind of the plinth upon which I set the monument, which is the Australian tour. But yeah, it went very well throughout the autumn. Certainly when I back last northern summer, back, June, July, August, when I was preparing for it. Yeah, that was a butterfly time. 15 years away from the road, a lot of expectations. People think, what's Ben going to say? I've always kind of had a view on things, and the world's changed a lot. My little press release line is, the last time I toured, I was smarter than my phone, which is actually true. Not anymore. But yeah, it went very well. And whilst I'm not complacent, I have hopes that I'll have an equally good reaction here. At least let's hope so.
Yeah, great.
And what was it about the current state of our planet that fired you up enough to finally get back out there?
Well, it's not so much the state of the planet that fired me up, more the state of the home, which is that it had returned to some semblance of normality after the wonderful but difficult and trying times that means raising a family. I stopped touring because the kids were young, and I last toured Oz and the UK back in 2005. And I was 6 months away, and the kids grew from being 5, 6 years old to 6, 7, and I missed it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of stopped. It wasn't like a big decision, but I just thought, well, I'll sit at home and write novels, and I can be part of my kids growing up. But now they have grown up, they've gone, they'll probably be back like boomerangs are.
Yeah, of
these
course
days.
they will.
But currently, the nest is empty, and Sophie said to me, you're good at it. You want to do it. You're always saying, every time you turn on the telly, I wish I was on stage. I could skewer that bit of hypocrisy or that marvelously weird thing that's happened. And so maybe she just wanted me out of the house, but I went back on the road. She came with me for quite a bit of it. She said, I'm your comedy wag. We had a month together on the UK tour. Went to some lovely seaside towns.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
Yes, Scunthorpe.
Speaking
Yeah, we were at that place.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Well, speaking of Sophie, getting back on the road, well, albeit just for Canning Highway for one day at this stage, but
The
your
highway.
pop star wife is getting back out there with the jam tarts.
What about that wonderful spread in the Sunday Times?
Yeah, it was
last
the biggest
weekend?
story, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sophie and my beautiful sister-in-law Anna looked absolutely wonderful, and all the girls are back. Yes, I don't know, some of your viewers might be too young to remember, but back in the 80s, the iconic Fremantle band, all-girl band, the Jam Tarts. The reason I'm Australian, that band, because they supported me and the late, great Rick Mail when we first came to Australia in 1986, and we got off a plane. And in fact, we had to, because in those days, I owe my domestic happiness to the Australian trade union movement. There are much reasons to celebrate trade unionism, but for me, the best one is that because in those days, you had to have 2 Aussies for every POM. Any visiting POM had to employ 2 Australians on the bill.
Yep.
It was quite draconian, so we had to have 4.
Wow.
And we were thinking, what are we going to do? 4 comedians. But some very clever promoter booked this beautiful all-girl
Aussie band.
and I ended up marrying the bass player. So there you go.
You can't get me. I'm part of the union. Oh, you can get him, though. That's good.
Exactly.
Love it.
Well, I got her.
Well, is Sophie your sounding board? I mean, who first hears your jokes and who reads your drafts?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it is reading it. It all starts with a written word for me. I write, I do a 2-hour show on my own. I talk fast. That's a lot of words, a lot of comic ideas. It's not really jokes. I sort of weave things together, hopefully in a funny way. And there are punchlines, but you have to follow it to get it. But yeah, Sophie is great. I mean, certainly she would be the most... my most common and vociferous critic, and I definitely... But with stand-up, even for her, I didn't do much, because you try and do stand-up to someone in the kitchen, and
it's weird.
you sell it to fail.
Yeah.
You start by saying, look, I know this is going to sound awful, but I'm going to do it properly on stage. And so, actually, probably my stand-up show was the thing she was least familiar with. She when I actually released it, my novels or a script, like for a movie or something, she's definitely read a few drafts, and I've benefited from great criticism, but the stand-up, no, she came and saw it and luckily loved it. She came and saw it in York, joined the UK tour in the beautiful city of York, and it was a great night because she gave a big thumbs up along with the rest of the
cool.
audience.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And Ben, you're so prolific, and I look at you with absolute respect, but also a little bit of envy. I mean, 16 novels, countless TV scripts, film scripts, stage shows. How do you get the time? Who does your admin?
I do. I have an accountant. I don't fill in my own tax, but I do most of my admin. Well, Sophie and I together. I live a pretty normal life. I mean, I that's my job, and I certainly don't do. I mean, don't do more than 8 hours a day, which most people have to do if they're lucky enough to have a job. So, I can work at home, when you're writing a novel. And I do, when I am writing, I only write when I really feel I want to do it, which is often. But if I don't feel like it, I'm very lucky. I'm sure I do suffer from writer's block, as they say. But for me, it's not something I don't suffer it because I just don't do it when I'm feeling uninspired.
Don't force it.
I don't force it. So, I'm fortunate always to be, ideas excite me. I love being part of the local community and the broader global community. I'm always interested in what's going on. So I've always got something to write about. And, I love history, and I've just done this huge sort of sitcom thing in Britain based around Shakespeare, a kind of Blackadder take on Shakespeare, which we've just opened a play in the West End called Upstart Crow. I don't even know the British comedian David Mitchell.
Yeah,
He's best known for Would I Lie to You over here,
wonderful.
and Peep Show,
Peep Show,
of course.
yeah.
And he stars as William Shakespeare
He's
in my
fantastic
sitcom.
in it.
Oh, he's absolutely wonderful. So I'm very lucky to get paid to do what was always going to be my hobby. So, if your hobby is your work, then that can take up a bit of time. But I still like to have a drink and cook a meal and be involved with my friends, go paddleboarding on the Swan, meet the dolphins.
Oh,
You still see
absolutely.
'em out there if you're lucky.
Walk around Frio. I mean, that idea of not having to lock the door and lock yourself in if you're not feeling inspired, then that's going to help in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. I can always get out on the river and ask the dolphins for inspiration.
Yeah, Ben, I want to thank you for using the word plinth already in the interview today, because my wife, it's a word she's been using lately. She wants a plinth to put something on in the garden.
Oh, right. She's got an objet.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
she wants a plinth for her objet.
She wants a
I hope
plinth.
you get her a nice block of concrete for her birthday. That's
Mate, she's from Hertfordshire, so she comes out with so many English terms, and like she'll reminisce about Beano comics, and
Beano,
she'll talk about
absolutely.
conker trees, and we had the biggest conker tree in our street. But when you first started doing comedy in Australia, did you find you had to modify quite quickly for the Aussie crowd?
No, I don't modify for anyone. I think the most important rule for any piece of art is that the artist should be true to themselves. You do what you think's funny, and if you're lucky enough, so will the audience. But if you're thinking, oh, I'm in Aussie, I'd better mention AFL or whatever, it's deceit, and the audiences can smell deceit very quickly. So, I mean, obviously, you got to remember to call Marmite Vegemite, if you can be bothered. But apart from that, my stuff's, I mean, there's sometimes a little bit of I can't do stuff about a British TV series that isn't on here or vice versa. But then because I have a very rich Australian life, and even at the beginning, I was always open and reading the papers. So I find Australian material comes to me, hopefully, and it'll be a part of the act. But I don't think, they're Australian, they're going to want me to talk about, because they want me to talk about what I want to talk about. That's why they bought a ticket to see me.
Yeah.
So I don't feel any pressure from any audience apart from to do my best for them.
Yeah, they'll pick a fraud straight away, won't they, if you're trying too hard?
Absolutely. First rule of comedy is truth.
One more thing, because you've worked with so many wonderful people, but we've now found out that you've written a song with the Wiggles.
Yeah, that came out. Do you know, I think this birthday party you're doing for leap year, I don't know if anyone's ever done that before, and 40-year-olds are going to be treated like 10-year-olds.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
a great idea. Yes, no, I'm a Wiggle. I'm the Pommy Wiggle. In fact, I wrote a movie for them. We tried it. We could not get the funding in the end, but it was a wonderful. This was the new Wiggles, who were wonderful. Emma and Lockie, absolutely marvellous. And of course, Anthony, the Blue Wiggle's still with them. No, I wrote them a lyric for one of their songs. I think it got an aria, actually, or at least it was on the album that did. My if you want to Google it, my Wiggle song is called Wiggletown.
Okay.
And those lyrics are mine, and I'm very proud that I am a working Wiggle. And I even get, like $6 royalty checks every now and then.
That's cute.
Yeah, well, it's a few. I think it's making up to a few hundred over the time. We don't talk money, but all I can say is it's the Wiggles have been very good to me.
And was Wiggletown a sort of, northern old coal mining town that Thatcher destroyed?
Yes, of course. Obviously, I got an awful lot of social democratic politics into Wiggletown. No, Wiggletown is where everything is is upside down. The clown smiles are frowns, and it's a fun song. I actually was very pleased with the lyric. I enjoyed working with the Wiggles a lot. They're great people, and of course, as a dad from the early noughties, you know, original what we now call heritage Wiggles were a big part of my life.
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
and I loved those songs. They're beautiful.
So Billy Bragg won't be covering Wiggletown in a hurry.
Billy's a good. I'm sure he wouldn't object. He's a very nice fella, and I'm sure he likes a nice kids tune along as anybody else does.
Well, if you're free on Friday, you're welcome to come to the party. We know some people we can get you in.
I'm actually having pizzas in Fremantle with dear old friends. They've got their own oven, and you get to make your own.
Oh, nice.
And I don't overload. You Aussies overload your pizzas.
Yeah,
Too
you
much
want-
cheese, too many fillings. You want just a delicate smear of sauce, a little bit of cheese.
Subtlety.
The perfect pizza. Just a margarita is perfect. Just don't overload it. Too much cheese.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Don't want too much cheese.
Lesson for life.
Yeah, well, lesson for our show. Thanks, Ben.
Oh, yeah.
Good to talk to you.
Crazy Matt and Kimber in the morning.